What I'm going to spend a lot of time on is the subtalar joint. That's the joint between the talus and the calcaneus. And this joint controls the way force passes from the body into the foot and from the foot back into the body. And it moves around an axis in the open chain. The subtalar joint axis, as defined by Root, Orient, and Weed, goes from dorsal anterior medial to plantar posterior lateral. In 3 dimensions, it looks like this. So if you have an axis that's askew to all 3 planes, the motion around that axis will occur in all 3 planes. So we get the motions of pronation and supination. Pronation involves dorsiflexion, eversion, external rotation, and supination is plantar flexion, inversion, internal rotation. It's easy to remember because it's the same in the hand. It's the way we carry soup, is supination. I'm from Nashville. Do you know how to find a songwriter in Nashville? You go like this. Waiter? Those are people that didn't remember supination. So here's the motions of pronation and supination. There's supination and pronation. So you're moving around all 3 cardinal body planes. The first thing I want you to note is that in the closed chain, the foot does not move around an axis. Easy to tell that because if you were moving around an axis, the ground would have to be moving, and unless you're in California, the ground is fairly stable. So we get motions of pronation and supination in the closed chain, that is when the foot's on the ground, by moving the bones in relationship to each other. We're going to take a close look at this subtalar joint. And it's a 3-faceted joint. There's a posterior, a middle, and an anterior facet. What I want you to note is that that middle facet sits out on a shelf of bone that extends out the medial side of the calcaneus, called the sustentaculum tali. It sustains or holds up the talus. And it acts as a lever arm. If you want to understand subtalar joint motion, you have to look at the geometry of each one of these 3 facets. And we're going to begin with the posterior facet. Now, the posterior facet is more or less the shape of a coffee cup. Let's take a look. Can you see that? It's a small section of a cone with the smaller part of the cone pointing medially toward the middle facet. Well, what is the axis of this shape? It's right down the middle. How can you possibly move around this shape? Well, you can slide on it, or you can rotate around it. And in fact, we do both. We rotate and slide. If you rotate and slide, you get what we call a screw-like or helicoidal motion. And that's as far as the literature goes, but it's not far enough.